Hey guys, this is Mrs. Harbin, and welcome to Algebra 1, Section 1.8. Our biblical integration is this. We know that God is truly an awesome God and that His plans are far-reaching, even down to the system of numbers. There's no detail that He did not create and He did not plan, and we can see this detail in our system of numbers. If we follow the numbers, we should follow the rest of God's plan as well. Our objective for today is this. You, the student, will be able to state the order of operations and evaluate numerical expressions using the order of operations. Hopefully the order of operations is nothing new to you. You've heard it before. It's very important that mathematicians agree on the order with which numeric expressions are calculated. If some add first and others multiply first and others divide first and others subtract first, we wouldn't have an orderly system of numbers. So we need to make sure we do the same things in the same order so that we are in agreement. So when we're talking about order of operations, you're probably familiar with that acronym PEMDAS. If you've been in math class before, you know this expression. You may not remember what it stands for, so we'll go over that together. But I'd also like to introduce GEMDAS. That's actually the one I'm going to be using. And I'll tell you about that with this very first letter. So normally we talk about parentheses first. And we evaluate within innermost grouping symbols first. I'm going to use G for grouping symbols. Yes, there are parentheses, but we've also been working with absolute value, and we've been seeing these absolute value bars. That's a grouping symbol. Sometimes we see brackets. That's a grouping symbol. And sometimes we have this square root symbol, which can also act as a grouping symbol. So anything inside the grouping symbol needs to be done first. Then we're going to look at exponents, which is what we learned about in last lesson, and we'll evaluate all exponential expressions. The M and the D in GEMDAS or PEMDAS happen at the same time. We're going to multiply and divide, moving from left to right at the same time. And lastly, in PEMDAS and GEMDAS both, addition and subtraction are last. They are done at the same time, moving from left to right. Let's take a look at an example. I'm going to write GEMDAS up here so that we can go through the steps one at a time and make sure we're doing this correctly. Multiplication and division done at the same time from left to right, and addition and subtraction, same time left to right. So that says GEMDAS. First, we're going to start with grouping symbols, and if we look at example A, we don't have any grouping symbols. So we move on to the next step, which is exponents. We do have some exponents. There we go, 3 to the second power. That can be simplified as 9. That's the only exponent we have. Next, we do multiplication and division from left to right, and we see moving from left to right, we've got one multiplication and division problem. So we have one division followed by a multiplication. So we're going to do division first since it's on the left, followed by multiplication. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then we get to that multiplication problem here. So this was simplified to 2. And we've got times 3. When we simplify that, 2 times 3 becomes 6. So we're left with 2 plus 9 minus 6, only addition and subtraction. We're going to do that moving from left to right. So we'll do 2 plus 9 first, which is not 5. 2 plus 9, which is 11, minus 6. And then we'll do that 11 minus 6, which gets us to the final answer of 5. Pause the video just for a second. Try this one on your own and see if you can come up with the right answer. All right, here we go. Remembering GEMDAS. G, we don't have any grouping symbols. E, we do have exponents. We have 3 different exponential expressions, so let's simplify those first. That gives us 8, 1, and 9. 8, 1, and 9. Then we're going to multiply and divide from left to right. We've got 5 times 4 and 9 divided by 3. When we simplify those, we get 20 and 3. Now all we're left with is addition and subtraction from left to right. And 8 minus 1 is 7, plus 20 is 27, minus 9 is 18, plus 3, you got it, 21. If you got that right, nice job. Now I told you I like to use G for GEMDAS instead of P for PEMDAS because we're not always dealing with just parentheses. We have other grouping symbols that we'll see in math as well. These grouping symbols indicate which operations to perform first. And we have already talked about these on our first slide, but as a reminder, we've got parentheses, brackets, braces, which I did not mention on the first slide. We also have, I'm going to add those absolute value bars and the radical symbol, which can function as a grouping symbol. So let's take a look at some examples that have grouping symbols. Using GEMDAS, we're going to do what's inside the parentheses first, which is 5 plus 7. That leaves us with 2 plus 3 times 12 divided by 2. Remember, when you have a number right next to another number in parentheses, the implied operation is multiplication. So that does mean to multiply. We don't have any exponents, so now we're going to do multiplication and division from left to right. 3 times 12 is our first multiplication problem on the left. So that becomes 36. And now we've got a division problem, 36 divided by 2, and that gives us 18. And now we're just adding from left to right with a final answer of 20. All right, here is another example. Try this one on your own. Hopefully you remember to do these grouping symbols first. There were 3 sets, so when we simplify this, we get 2 times 4. That's what this became, 4, minus 7 minus 5. 7 minus 5 is 2. That's what that became. And this 1 minus 4 became negative 3. We're then going to do our multiplication. Up at the top, we've got 2 times 4, and on the bottom, we've got negative 3 times 3. 2 times 4 is 8, and this negative 3 times negative 3 becomes a positive 9. We're then going to do our addition and subtraction from left to right. 8 minus 2 is 6, and 5 plus 9 is 14, which gives us 6/14. That's a fraction that we can then reduce, dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 2 to get down to 3/7. All right, a different order of operations. Try this one. You've got grouping symbols within grouping symbols and exponents. Where do we start first? Well, we're going to go inside the grouping symbol. And if there are other grouping symbols, we're going to go inside those first, which means we're starting with 3 minus 5, which is inside this other grouping symbol. That's an absolute value bar. So start at the innermost grouping symbol. 3 minus 5 simplifies down to negative 2. With inside those brackets, we've got an exponent, which is going to simplify to 8. With inside those brackets, inside these absolute value bars, we're still working inside here. We've then got multiplication. Left to right, 7 times 8 times negative 2, which simplifies down to negative 112, still inside our grouping symbols. We've got that simplifying down to negative 110. We've now simplified everything in the grouping symbol to one digit, negative 110, and we can carry on with the rest of our problem. We don't have any other parentheses or exponents, so we're going to go to multiplication and division from left to right. Getting rid of that absolute value bar, the absolute value of negative 110 is just 110, and now we can multiply that times 3. So we have this becoming 330. Now we're left with subtraction, moving from left to right. 9 minus 330 is going to give us a negative number, negative 321, minus another 4. That becomes negative 325. All right, today we reviewed the order of operations for simplifying expressions. Don't forget that we are going to use G for grouping symbols, followed by M, D, and M and D at the same time, left to right, and A and S, GEMDAS, at the same time, left to right. If you have more than one grouping symbol, let's say you have something like this, and then this, and then maybe another one of these inside. You're going to start with the innermost parentheses or grouping symbol and work your way out through the operation. Do what's inside first and work your way out. you guys have any questions, don't forget to ask me next class.